Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the greatest recordings ever. And today, we're talking about Schubert's Unfinished. Yes, this is the symphony that Schubert never finished. Right? That's how you always knew what the tune was. Listen, this is such a great symphony, but everybody takes it for granted. There are a few reasons for that. One is that it's unfinished. I mean, it's only two movements. It's not long. It gets programmed as sort of a filler piece. And even on recordings, I mean, it's got to be coupled with something else because it's only basically 20 minutes of music, 25 minutes if you're really stretching it. And so it doesn't have the cred of, big completed works. It's a totally popular piece that everybody loves. And, here's the other funny thing. It's really very easy to play. It's in today's standards, it's a youth orchestra piece. I mean, not that you can't play it fabulously, and you must. And the more you work on it, the more glorious it can become. And of course, it has myriad details which can be uncovered and savored by conductors who know what they're doing. But with all that said, the first piece I ever played timpani in was the Schubert Unfinished with a student orchestra. It's just not that difficult to get through. Let's put it that way. I mean, to get through with distinction is another thing, but still, and the third thing is that it kind of just plays itself. It's so euphonious and so lovely. And although, truth be told, I mean, the first movement is kind of nightmarishly creepy. If it's done right, it can be like expressionistically terrifying and send a shiver down your spine. But you can just play it for the beautiful tunes also, and the dramatic climaxes sort of take care of themselves. And wow, it's a no-fail hit is what it is. And it ends quietly because it only has a slow movement. In the second movement, that's as far as Schubert got. And don't tell me, well, yes, he did a bit of the scherzo. That's as far as Schubert got, as far as anybody cares. And the truth of the matter is we can just sort of accept it as being there. So there are millions and millions of recordings of it, and a lot of them are very good. And, how do you pick one of the greatest recordings ever of the Unfinished? Well, they're the ones that are coupled to the ninth or the seventh, depending on how you count them. But, the great C major symphony, like by the people like Sell and Munch, which are just terrific, absolutely wonderful. And then there are, the cranky Germans who do it so well, like Klemperer. And hard to say where you draw the line in picking one of the greatest recordings ever. So I decided to go for a version that, well, maybe you probably didn't think of, but it's still unquestionably one of the great ones. And it is this one. Oh, it's in this big box. André Cluytens with the Berlin Philharmonic from 1960. Now, note, he did this twice. He also did it in 1951. It's also in this box with the Paris Conservatory Orchestra. Now, as you all probably know by now, I love the Paris Conservatory Orchestra, particularly in German music, because they are probably the closest we will ever get to an authentic sound in that repertoire. I mean, that was the orchestra that was formed in the 1820s specifically for the purpose of playing Beethoven. They were formed by Francois Habeneck, the conductor, who knew Beethoven. And so that tradition was maintained without a break right up until the 1960s when they were disbanded and Carillonized. They formed the Orchestre de Paris, and they flew in Carillon to do the Franck D minor and record it with them. And that was the end of the Paris Conservatory Orchestra. But anyway, so they're wonderful in that music. But it's a 1951 mono recording. And in 1960, Cluytens, who had done a complete Beethoven cycle with the Berlin Philharmonic, had the Berlin Philharmonic. And he was a very, very fine conductor of German music. I mean, his Beethoven cycle is very respectable. It's not one of my favorites. It isn't. Some people swear by it. I had it when I was a kid. My mother had some bits of it, especially the pastoral, which was I thought was very, very beautiful. But the fact of the matter is, He was as much a conductor of German music as he was of French music. He made his reputation doing French music, but the German stuff is terrific. And this is a gorgeous unfinished symphony. It's very well recorded for 1960. The sonics are beautiful, number one. Number two, it is a grim performance of the unfinished. That is, it's big and it's dark. And that's how I like it. I mean, the period instrument people are in the process of sucking all the juice out of it and rendering it completely anodyne and harmless, which is really a terrible, terrible shame, because the fact of the matter is it should be played like the late Romantic expressionistic horror the first movement really is. I mean, you can really grind out those climaxes, and if you have the Berlin Philharmonic plays this so beautifully. They clearly appreciate the music. And remember, Karajan never liked Schubert particularly. It didn't respond well to being Karajanized, like the Orchestre de Paris did or whatever. It didn't. It needed somebody who really loved the work and wasn't obsessing about the sound of the strings at the expense of everyone else, because the woodwind playing, especially in the Andante in the second movement, is just beautiful. I mean, the clarinet solo, oh my God, in that second subject, it's just exquisite. And, the first movement has those, well, it's pre-Bruckner. It really is, especially in the climax of the development when it's going yum ba-dum 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 bum bum wah-dum. The horns are in the back going dum ba-dum 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 ba-dum. It's the coda of the first movement of Bruckner's Ninth, actually. You have the same texture, of course, with hundreds more instruments, but it's the same concept. Schubert and Bruckner were like this when it came to that sort of rhythmic thing that they were doing there. And you hear that. You should hear that. You should hear that the identity between the two composers, and you should hear the proto bigness of Schubert's vision in this symphony, especially in the first movement, and the power and the emotional angst that the music can generate. It's a very good performance for all of those qualities. Fabulously well played, like I said, the labor of love. And it's probably not a performance you take out very often, even if you have this, because it's got all of its French stuff, and it's got the Beethoven cycle, and it's got all these other things. But the fact of the matter is, there are great performances of this symphony lying in the corners of the repertoire, in the unswept dark recesses of the box sets that we never dig into. And it's kind of fun. It's a sort of a fun topic, would be like, the dark recesses of boxed sets that no one pays attention to because we've got them sitting around on our shelves. But this was released separately by Testament, also, by the way. I mean, with other things. But the point is, it's an amazing unfinished. Certainly one of the greatest recordings ever. And you owe it to yourself to hear it. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.